Good to see you. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Tash Tootle and I'm head of merchant services for Visa. It's great to be at the expo today. I've come to talk to you about retail futurology. I'm really lucky in my day job. I actually get to speak to pretty much all the big merchants across Europe, and I think without exception, they're all really challenged by what do they do and how do I invest with technology? Where do we go in this particular area? And how do I deliver a more relevant, more personalised customer experience? But a lot of them really cite this, I think, a really pervasive and extensive problem. That in a world where we're actually all set to automatic, we as consumers, we need to be automatically identified. We actually want things to be delivered quickly and immediately. And the providers of those services need to find a viable way to identify us in terms of who we are, what we do, where we come from. And I think as the world gets peppered with more and more different technology and we accelerate towards the Internet of Things, I think the whole ID dilemma is going to become more challenging and more interesting. It's something at Visa, we're really in the business of, because if you actually take back the Visa card to its really bare essentials, it effectively IDs me as Tash Tootle and says that I actually have authority and it's a direct link to my money in my bank account, and a way of saying to the retailer, look, hey, it's fine if Tash Tootle comes in and buys this really fabulous pair of Jimmy Choos, she actually has the funds to be able to pay for it. So it's something that's sort of really, really close to us as an organisation. But I think as we're going towards the Internet of Things and these new technologies, there's actually more smarter ways for retailers and other organisations to effectively ID us than just this piece of plastic. So I'm going to sort of talk to that with a background in terms of the context today. So if you look at consumer shopping behaviour, we absolutely know that it's evolving and changing. I think there's no secrets on these particular numbers. I find it a little bit worrying that 26% of shopping happens when we're at work, and I've had words with my team and said, guys, really? 26%? This is a scary number. But I also find it interesting that actually only 4% of shopping happens when it comes to commuting. And if you think about that, what's the reason behind that? My personal view is, I travel into London every day and I come effectively along the M4 on the train line, through Newbury, through Reading. There's no signal in terms of the phone. The 4G access is really poor. The Wi-Fi is absolutely terrible. So I think, when you think about the commuting piece, it's really much more than anything is to do with actually access to technology. I was lucky enough to have the CEO of one of the major big box supermarkets in the office fairly recently. And I was a big shopper, I'm not naming any names, I'm a big shopper of his. And I said, it really frustrates me whenever I'm shopping in your store, I can never use my phone. My Wi-Fi just, the signal is always blocked out. It's awful. And he said, well, we do that on purpose. We actually don't want people looking at their phone in store. It's like, really? This is like one of the big supermarkets. So things are not necessarily all that it seems. So I don't know if any of you have actually recognised this particular image. This is a snapshot from a film called Minority Report, and it actually came out as a novella in 1956 by a gentleman called Philip K. Dick. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie. Yeah. It's all about the future, and the pretext of the movie is effectively being able to foretell when a crime's going to happen. But a big aspect of it is actually about being able to ID a customer. So in this really famous scene, Tom Cruise is walking into a store, past a row of digital signs, and it recognises him and says, drink Guinness. He wants him to advertise Guinness. It says that he's shopping at Gap. Come and buy the latest clothes from Gap. It sort of senses that, and then it also welcomes him into the store and calls him Mr. Yakamoto, which is really quite ironic because that's not his name, because he's actually stolen somebody's identity. So I think when you actually think about what's actually happening and how technology is going to change, this really brings the whole ID piece into question. Which brings me on, I think, really nicely to the Internet of Things. I mean, the Internet of Things, I think, is really a buzzword with retailers at the moment. It's really taken over the whole concept of sort of omni-channel, big data. Everyone's saying, well, it's all about IoT. Where should I be investing? So just to be really clear, what do we mean by the Internet of Things? It's a vast network of everyday objects that have connectivity and allow them to send and receive data to each other. Back in the 90s, when we first started talking about IoT, everyone thought it was going to be the connected fridge, and the fridge would be reordering all of our stuff, but it's really so much more than that. And if you look at the numbers here, Gartner are forecasting that, the number of connected things will reach 20 billion by 2020. At Visa, we have a big innovation centre, which we opened fairly recently, and we have a lot of themes regarding connections. So we have the connected home, we have the connected shopping experience, we also have the connected car, and a lot of that is actually sort of driven by the whole piece on IoT. And looking at how that actually brings us into everyday technology. Wearables, I'm seeing, is probably one of the fastest growing areas that people are actually looking at and investing in. So the Fitbit was one of the biggest products actually sold at Christmas. I don't know if anyone has a Fitbit. Fitbits are really popular, So when you look at the whole wearable piece, active wearables such as smartphones are effectively, the sort of the wearable in its originality, but it's evolving into things like jackets, it's evolving into watches, fitness bands, fitness devices, and McKinsey are forecasting that this is going to increase grow by 60% year on year. So thinking about how that interacts into payment, we're going to see more and more devices actually having payment functionality in there. When you're travelling on the tube, you want to be able to pay instantly. You just want to be able to tap and go now with the wrist. We're seeing another behavioural change. So where are merchants actually investing in the future? We do this research every year across the merchant community, and the mobile app piece for me is actually the one that really stands out. So we did this last year. Mobile apps was sort of midway, sort of where the sort of contactless currently is in store. Merchants weren't really into investing in that particular space. It was all about online. That really for them was top of mind. So this year they're actually saying everything's actually about mobile apps, and we're up to 67%. So what's the reason behind that? People say, yeah, well, are we getting app fatigue? Well, not necessarily. Merchants are really investing in apps. They see greater spend when you actually have an app than on any other type of shopping channel. For us, we're seeing app spend go through the roof when it comes to Visa. And one of the reasons behind that, I think, is actually to do with loyalty. So you look at organisations like Tesco's and Boots, they've invested significant sums and they've created these amazing loyalty programs, but they do cost a huge sum of money to keep moving and keep regenerating and keep current. And the app for them, actually, the app for merchants is actually a really fast way to actually build a loyalty program. So looking at what Tesco's are doing, linking their app also to a loyalty platform. So they have the Pay Quick wallet. Looking at what Inditex are doing. So Inditex, you may not be aware of the organisation behind Zara, Massimo Dutti. They've got, I think, 9 brands in their portfolio. Again, developing a wallet type solution as a proof of concept. So, and what it means for organisations like that is that it allows them to start to capture genuine customer information and not to have a really great, huge loyalty platform. So I think the data piece is fascinating. But then look at wearables, 5%. Now wearables wasn't even on the chart last year. So forecast for the future, we're definitely going to see wearables increase in terms of actually a channel to go. We saw Robin Terrell, who's ex-Boots and JLP Tesco's this morning speaking, and he was talking about a fashion company in London who actually are now using wearables in terms of the smartwatch. It's a jeans company to help customers when they're actually shopping in store. So they actually have the stock actually on their phones. So again, a different evolution when it comes to wearables. So this brings us on to, I think, what's sort of creepy and cool. And this is a great study by a company called Rich Relevance. I was lucky enough to have the guy from Rich Relevance pop by our stand earlier on today and saying, I really love this this survey that they've done. So this study's really highlighted consumer attitudes towards the integration of digital technology within the bricks and mortar stores, and looked at what's creepy and what's cool, and really helping retailers create informed decisions when regarding technology to invest in. I think no surprising, 62%. We think that's pretty cool, being able to scan your products in store. We take that as a fait accompli. We want to do that now. 52% getting pop-up offers. I find it really great that actually nearly half of people are comfortable when it comes to using fingerprint technology to pay. That's really great for us, and that's how we're developing our solutions. Maybe what's not so creepy, facial recognition. This is really interesting. So there's actually some big merchants in the US. There's also some hotel chains that are actually trialing facial recognition to identify VIP customers when they actually walk into their store in their hotel, which is really great. Fantastic. Hi, Tash, welcome back. Really great to see you again. You get that personalised service. I don't mind it probably with something like that, because that's a hospitality experience. You're quite used to it. If I was just walking into my local supermarket, I might find that a little bit cheesy and a little bit scary. But actually, also merchants are actually using it in another way to identify known shoplifters. So there actually is other ways they're using facial recognition. So yeah. So, and facial recognition is really exploding in marketing, and advertisers are using new ways to connect to this, and brands are as well. Dow Egberts did a really great piece out in Oliver Tambo Airport in South Africa, whereby they actually had a coffee machine, and if you yawned in front of the coffee machine, it recognised it and it gave you a free cup of coffee. It's a bit gimmicky, but it's really quite fun. And I've got two great organisations here doing something. So the top one is Astra Beers. Google it, have a look at them online. So Astra Beers is a German beer company. They really want to start to market to the female audience. So they created effectively an interactive advertising screen that basically talked to a lady when it walked past. It recognised female features, and it interacted, and it said, "Hey, come and have a beer, come and talk, come, we're great, And when the guy walked past, it just said, "Hey, there's nothing for you, nothing here." And it also recognises under 16s. So it says, "No, you shouldn't be drinking beer, you're too young." So again, how brands are using that. The same with the J2O advert. So they did this outside a bus stop in central London. I don't know if you're familiar with the Who's Afraid of Mr. Wolf, the kids game where you have to keep still. So they've had this really great new drink they wanted to advertise, and the wolf was effectively on the side of the screen, and it would move when you weren't looking, and then when you turned to look at the screen, the wolf would stop. So again, it's recognising potentially movement and using biometrics and interaction. So, and also virtual reality is really fascinating for us, and I've got my this is our virtual reality headset. We're actually showcasing virtual reality on our stand at the moment. But this is Thomas Cook. So Thomas Cook was using Oculus Rift in terms of allowing you to experience your holiday effectively before you booked it. So you could actually sit in that restaurant overlooking Sydney Harbour Bridge and go, "Yeah, do you know, this is where I want to be." For us at Visa, we've got a really great example about using virtual reality to showcase the stadium experience. Like, where am I going to sit in the stadium, and actually having a full 360 view of where's the best place to be, and then actually buying product effectively through virtual reality, so buying the merchandising, buying the drinks, etc. So we're seeing that as a big area. And then that takes us almost into augmented reality as well. So retailers are using, I think, recognition in other ways. Thanks to the ubiquity of smartphones and web cameras, we're seeing this all the time to make everyday shopping experience sort of more enhanced. So Warby Parker, for example, is employing facial recognition to let buyers try on glasses. They're uploading a picture of themselves and you try it on. Sephora have got an augmented reality mirror, so you can try on. You can see what you look like in that new shade of like cerise lipstick. So again, retailers are finding new ways to do things there. So looking at biometrics, there's no doubt the proliferation of mobiles is actually really driving the whole adoption of biometrics. We all know that mobile smartphones are predicted to increase tenfold, and customers are increasingly comfortable and familiar using their fingerprint. A really great example for me as a user, I got my new iPhone this week. First thing I did, great new iPhone. I had to sort of put in my password. It's like, really, what happened to the 4-digit pin on my old iPhone? Now I've got to put in this really long password. So the first thing I obviously changed was to be able to access it with my fingerprint. Now in the old days, the first thing we used to change on our smartphone was our ringtone. So again, it just shows, I think, how we're changing our customer behaviours with regards to these technologies. But what do consumers really think of biometrics? I think biometrics has without a doubt a real relevance to the world of payments and obviously to us at Visa. And we've got countless trials going on in many markets about how can we use biometrics for payments. Consumers actually see fingerprint as the most comfortable form. I think we're pretty used to that, and that's great thanks to the phone solutions with Samsung and Apple. People are used to authenticating with their fingerprint. Retinal scanning, again, a little different. People aren't quite so comfortable, but that's becoming the norm when you think about going through passport control, facial recognition. You're actually starting to be quite comfortable to do that. I'm not, DNA sampling. For me, goes maybe back to the sort of a bit more creepy. I'm not quite sure whether I want to be identified with my DNA on that piece. But also, we're actually starting to see that people are using biometrics now when it comes to even to sort of that offline experience. So you think of it more in a face-to-face environment. But when it actually comes to shopping at home, people are actually starting to think about using biometrics. But for us, the balance between security and frictionless commerce is key. So when you think about biometric authentication, it's all about speed. It's when we want something instantly. We want something now. It's when I want to log into my phone. So people are really cool about using it on public transport. We want that really quick experience. We want it when we're using sort of groceries, when we're shopping at fast food restaurants or buying groceries or coffee shops. And that's a builder when it comes to things like sort of contactless technology. One of the reasons why you saw contactless technology being used in places like McDonald's and Starbucks. It's all about throughput. It's all about speed at a point of sale. Contactless technology doesn't really work for bigger, what I call bigger box retailers. The fashion retailers like Bag and Tag. They want time to engage with their customers. But contactless is really a stepping stone in terms of changing behaviours to tap and go with regards to phones. So now we're seeing the reason why so many fashion retailers are adopting contactless is because people actually want to tap and go with their mobile. So it's a behavioural change. So it's not necessarily about the speed, it's about what a customer wants to do. So we all know that e-commerce authentication is changing. We're seeing customer expectations changing. We're seeing things with regards to technology. And if any of you are really close in the retail space, you know that regulation is going to cause us some real challenges. I don't know if anyone here is a retailer. Anyone's thinking about PSD2? I mean, that's going to cause some real challenges when it comes to authentication moving forward. So if you haven't seen that, certainly look that up with regards to strong authentication. So the Commission's trying to put certain potential barriers in the way and make it more difficult, we think, in terms of the streamlined checkout experience. So what are Visa actually doing in these particular areas? Well, I don't know if you're aware of this thing called 3D Secure, verified by Visa. You're there, you're shopping online, you've had a great shopping experience, you want to come and pay, and you can't remember your damn password. Yeah, I know, we've all been there, and it's hugely frustrating. So what are we trying to do about that? So we've actually got a solution called Verified by Visa 2 that we're launching later on this year. You might not necessarily see it potentially in the UK because the banks and the retailers are really great at recognising you. So they don't actually ask you for that verified by Visa password. They actually know that I'm Tash Tutil. They know I live in Somerset. They know that I always shop on my iPad and I'm a regular shopper at, for example, Tesco's. So they look at that and they go, that's fine. I'm happy. I don't need to actually ask her for the verified by Visa password. So that's really positive. But there's still some merchants that don't adopt that. So we're trying to improve that experience. And the key aspect is I'll actually use Touch ID. So again, rather than actually putting in a password, you'll be able to authenticate effectively with your fingerprint. So again, how we're moving on there. The next piece is also, when it comes to e-com, is also Visa Checkout, which effectively is trying to make it easier for consumers online to shop. So this, for us, is seeing actually a higher conversion rate. So we're actually getting more spend with regards to higher basket values, more conversions as well. So again, we're trying to remove the friction with regard to the shopping experience at Visa, and we work with the banks and we work with the retailers to actually make that happen. We tend to sit behind the scenes as an organisation, so that's sort of where we are and what we're doing. So what's our sort of our mission? Well, it's really about trying to improve digital commerce. We want to try and give customers a better customer experience. We want to try and create more sort of simplified choices for shoppers, and we actually want to have fewer integrations. It's about increased conversion rates, so easier for customers to buy, reducing barriers, and increasing sales, and I think enhanced security. So we've obviously seen the data breaches in the US. You may well be aware of a significant number of those. Fortunately, that hasn't really happened in Europe, because I think many of the merchants are extremely data savvy and cautious and careful about what you do with your data. And that brings me on to tokenization, which is another presentation in itself, which I think will really help in those particular areas. So that's been my sort of whistle-stop, sort of like 15-minute overview on retail futurology. Come and see the Visa team on the stand. We're just over in the corner, just over there. Come and experience our virtual reality solutions. We have a great innovation centre in London where you can see things like the connected car and the connected shopping experience, and get closer to the merchant community. I'm happy to take questions. People don't tend to ask questions in this particular environment, but I am happy to take questions, or come and see me afterwards. But that's great. Thanks so much.